And now for our main event tonight, I'd like to bring up Sabina. Sabina is our founding member, and she put together this meeting tonight. Thank you so much, Sabina, for your great work. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Caroline. And it is my honor to do this. I've been dabbling in this for 7 years in my own independent capacity with my company, but also at my corporate job at PricewaterhouseCoopers. So let me just quickly paint the context. I want to make this short, but want to give the context of the discussion with the great panelists that we have today here. So my journey began at PwC with smart cities, where I was kind of spearheading this global research, and I stumbled upon this, and the briefing was, by 2030, 60 to 70% of the world population is going to live in 50 cities. And I was leading the strategy for retail and consumer sector. And we said, oh my God, look at the impact on our clients. What will Coke do and what will Walmart do if this starts to happen? But soon the smart city started to unfold, and that's where my passion for this grew. But think about the statistic. By 2030, if that's the percentage of humanity that will live in cities, the pressure on local governments to gear up to handle that is immense. So over the last 7 years, and that's only my journey, I have seen and read and dabbled in seeing how waking up to the fact and gearing up for the action is happening at the local government level, including Atlanta and many other cities around the globe. So from being projects and side projects of large companies with deep pockets with local governments, it's gone to really serious stuff happening around the world. But really, so what are the three big questions local governments are asking themselves in that context? The questions they're asking is really, how will our existing infrastructure, both natural and man-made, will hold up? What do we need to do? The second one is, how will we stay or become competitive to attract businesses and talent into our cities, to have a thriving economy? And the third, which is most dear to my heart, is how are we going to improve the quality of our citizens, current and future ones, every single day? Whether it is the quality of the air we breathe, the time we spend on traveling from work to home to take care of our families. So these are very real issues. So it kind of ranges from infrastructure all the way to what impact is it on my daily life, right? All of you are nodding, and that's what it's all about, right? So that's where the smart technology, smart cities things come in. The smartness is coming from technology and data, really. And the conversation that you will see happening today will range from how efficiency is only one aspect of smart technologies. It's really about smart decisions, real-time, predictive. That's where the magic really lies. So with our fantastic panel, which ranges from a global company to a product company, to an entrepreneurial company, and to Ms. Deborah Lamb, who sits on the intersection of research and smart cities and working in that area, we're going to have a great discussion and really look at the choices companies and cities are making and the opportunities for women like you and me in any of these areas that these ladies are representing. So with that, let me introduce Deborah Lamb, and she is a moderator, and it's all yours, Deborah.
Braving the traffic and the rain to come here tonight for a really special panel, and I'm really excited about this because I really want to steer this as a conversation around smart cities and where women and all of us can play an active role in it. So, move deeper into the conversations than what you probably may have seen in other smart cities conversations. So next to me, I think I have a powerhouse panel of really amazing ladies. So I'll let them introduce themselves and what they do in smart cities to kick off.
I am Laura Weissong. I'm the CEO and founder of a startup company called TransHalo. We are developing cybersecurity technology for connected and autonomous fleet vehicles. I'm also an ATDC company as well.
Hi, I'm Winter Horrible, and I work for Temple Incorporated. I actually cover this area for them. I am in the traffic industry side, and I actually, at this point, I used to be in the consulting side. I now provide products to the people I worked closely with and stuff. And a lot where we've we've had some nice smart city stuff going on, one with the North Avenue corridor, if y'all have heard of that, and then also the city of Marietta, just here locally, are two real quickly I can speak on.
Hi, I'm Mary Peterson. I'm Vice President of Marketing for Ruckus Networks, an ARRIS company. So if you don't know ARRIS is the world's largest cable and broadband infrastructure, and they are headquartered just 7 miles from here. So I've actually had the opportunity to be there the last couple of days. Ruckus Networks is an edge of the network company providing wired and Wi-Fi or wireless solutions to enterprises and governments worldwide. We're headquartered out in Sunnyvale, California. My involvement in smart cities has to do with the marketing, because we do smart city, as a company, smart city deployments around the world in all different kinds of business models, all different kinds of deployments. So I'll be able to talk about many of the different use cases that we've seen from the edge of the network perspective.
Wonderful. So just quickly, with a show of hands, how many people have heard or know about smart cities or understand the term? Not bad, mixed, okay. And how many of you would describe yourself in the smart city space, work in the smart city space, or want to work in the smart city space? Okay, more hands. All right, good. So maybe with that, can we just obviously there are many and no definitions of smart cities, so why don't we have just a quick overview of what smart cities means to you, as well as maybe how you got started in this smart city space, for those that might be interested. I always turn to Laura first because she's like next
I guess
to me,
I'll
but
start.
I can mix it up later. But
Thank you.
Laura can start.
My definition is around smart cities is the use by urban areas of communication technology and sensor technology in order to make the urban area more efficient and effective, and hopefully reduce cost in managing those resources. So things like waste, energy, transportation infrastructure, those type of things. So that's my definition. And how we're around that is the whole autonomous vehicle and autonomous fleet vehicle, as well as connected, is going to be a very big part of the efficiency around the whole infrastructure component of this, to hopefully alleviate a lot of issues we have in the supply chain as well as traffic in general.
All right. Obviously, smart cities is going to be defined in a different way for each industry. So kind of to give it a little bit more general, the way I see it is basically we're leveraging technology and the data technology provides for a multitude of solutions. What we're doing, when I'm thinking about it over a broad spectrum, is we are technology connected to technology. We have people connected to technology, and then we have people connected to other people, and that's what's going to help us with being safer. That's going to help us in the sense of being more efficient, and also kind of driving a user-friendly environment. And that's the way. And in the traffic world, it's you guys are in it every day. If you live here, you are dealing with it every day. And of course, there is a way that smart cities can help all of you in this room.
Great. So my definition is somewhat similar. I take a broader view of smart cities. I like to think of smart cities as connected communities, because if you're not connected, you can't be smart, right? So it starts with connectivity. But in my view, those communities could range from small villages, because there's still a lot of small villages out there in places like India where people in those villages have never even been on the internet. Right? And so now we're seeing deployment of Wi-Fi for the first time, just getting the people in the small villages on the internet, all the way up to huge cities like Atlanta and New York that are doing these more sophisticated providing more sophisticated services. So there's a huge gamut of use cases across a lot of different city types, as Winter said, and a lot of different benefits. There's also different business models. I know we'll be talking a lot about municipally driven smart cities, but we're already seeing a lot of private and public-private opportunities developing as well that are super successful. So I'm excited about smart cities because there is a lot of opportunity out there. It just depends on what you like to get involved in.
Yeah, and that's a really good deeper dive transition. So, Winter, why don't we start with you? I mean, you mentioned a little bit about North Avenue Corridor, and that might be a really good example of a PPP. And maybe we can move on to Mary to talk about, other examples of PPPs and where Ruckus and ARRIS have come in, and then follow with Laura in that regard. So, Winter, why don't you kick off?
So with North Avenue, it actually, and I learned this obviously from the City of Atlanta people, but it actually started as a roadway improvement project. And fortunately, the city saw a way to, let's do more. Yeah, we have money, sure, we can improve the roadway, we can put asphalt down and stuff, but let's see what we can do with this technology. Let's leverage it. Let's, see what the cost is. And they actually found that the cost of adding technology to this corridor, and there were 4 corridors they were looking at, but this was the one that seemed to be the right one that, they thought they should start with. So they basically turned a project that was kind of on a small scale. I mean, still a lot of money because it takes a lot of money to maintain our roadways, our sidewalks and everything. But then they also found a way to add in the smart corridors side of it. What happened with Renew Atlanta on our side, what's very different is, one, they went out with an RFI, request for information. Typically in our industry, you go out for an RFP, which means you already know what you want. You've pretty much spec'd it out. Now you want people to try and go after it. What I like about the RFI process is because it is technology and because it's changing every single day, traffic engineers really don't know and can't. It's hard for us to keep up because we're trying to make sure congestion relief and we're focusing on the things that we know best, but it's very difficult for us to keep up with the technology. So with that RFI, that was probably the number one thing that made this a successful project. And so where I come from is we actually submitted on the RFI. It was very broad. And so when they saw what we had, plus the great thing about an RFI is they got to pick and choose different companies, different people. Like they like this aspect from one. Oh, but this is an idea. And since this is a smart corridor living lab is what they call it, they want these products to come in and they want to be able to see what they can do, how they can help us and stuff. So even just the product that I have, which is actually, it does connect basically your vehicle to infrastructure, your people to the infrastructure there. If you want to get the Travel Safely app and go down North Avenue, and even in the city of Marietta, it'll say get ready for green, and in 4 seconds the light will turn green. So it gives you an audible alert that lets you know to get ready. Stop being distracted. Whether it's your phone, whether it's your kid, whether it's you talking to the person next to you because y'all are having a great conversation. Get ready for green and get going. It can also alert you if you're going to run the red light. It'll say red light, just to kind of give you that extra level of safety alert. And that's just the couple of things that this product can do. But that's, I don't know if there's any more to that, but that's where I'll stop because I could keep going.
Mary?
Okay, so I'll give you 2 quick examples. First of all, as I mentioned in India, what the government is doing there, now this is the central government, what we would call federal, I don't know what they call it there, but they're deploying the Wi-Fi infrastructure into the villages, but what they're doing is they're enabling small business people in the village to offer Wi-Fi as a service. So the infrastructure is there, and then I like to think of it as like micro networks, right? So they can sell the Wi-Fi to the villagers at 0.3 cents per megabyte, right? Think about how cheap that is, right? But that's what those people can afford. And the villager, or the business person, can actually make money on that. So that's how they're partnering, sort of enabling the economy, but providing sort of the seed to get it going. And I like to compare that actually to microloans, if you've heard about microloans in emerging markets, which, by the way, the majority of the people taking out those loans are women. So I'm really curious to see if it's going to be women setting up these micro networks too. Could be cool. So that's one. And then on the other end of the spectrum, a project that we did in partnership with a company called Intersection in New York was with the city, where the city owned the right-of-way to all the old phone booths that nobody's using anymore, right? So we converted those phone booths to outdoor advertising that are also hotspots, Wi-Fi hotspots, and provide city services, directories, charging services, and that sort of thing. So it's funded through advertising, and the city gets money. New York City, there's 7,000 kiosks in Manhattan. It's pretty cool. So if you're up in New York, just check it out. So it's a partnership between Intersection and New York City. So it's a pretty cool PPP, as you call it. I have to say I haven't heard PPP before.
Well, I'm on a bit of the different side of all of this. So all the connection is great. And I think it'll help tremendously with our logistics issues, getting in and out of cities, getting packages delivered, getting stuff from our ports. But on the other side of that, there are things, being connected has risks, and we deal with the risk side. So we are focused on trying to provide a safe vehicle environment for the trucking and fleet business who are on our roadways every day delivering billions and billions of dollars worth of stuff for our economy. So we're ensuring that our technology can help. Hopefully we'll be a piece of a puzzle. It's a complex puzzle. There's a lot of pieces to security within a vehicle. There's a lot of companies out there doing work. We participate in the Auto ISAC, which is the group for the automotive industry that actually provides feedback to the OEMs, the manufacturers, and to the Tier 1 and Tier 2 suppliers about any incidents. So we actually sit on those monthly calls. We can't actually be a member because it's only open to the OEMs. Third parties aren't allowed, but we can be partners, which we are. So we're privy to some of the things that are going on in the industry by having that participation. We spend a lot of time in Detroit with manufacturers, but we're trying to grow the market here in the Southeast. There's a lot of auto manufacturing going on down here. So we hope to be a piece of the security component of that for the trucking and fleet industry.
Fantastic. So you just heard, like, even within these three panels, 3 different use cases of how smart cities can be applied, from travel and transportation congestion to broadband and Wi-Fi to even the trucking industry in terms of security. So tell us a little bit more about other use cases in terms of, like, where do smart cities lie in terms of everyday lives beyond even these 3?
I'll go first. So I guess in my industry, one thing is the smart cities. We've talked about connectivity, especially when you're around Atlanta. Their fiber network it's aging, and that's how we usually are talking to different things around here. So obviously, with cellular getting more reliable and stuff, you're seeing that become something. So, for instance, I would say that's one thing that we all deal with, and that's our phones and everything. I mean, we're all being smart in some way, shape, or form because we're connected and, getting that information. The other thing that y'all may not realize, especially on the roadways, is emergency responders. If there is a device in the cabinet and there's a device on that responder, and then they can get the green lights at intersections. They can have a preemption occur, which gives them the green lights. That's where it can provide safety for every single one of you, anyone who's in your life, your mom, your dad, your grandparents, your kids, things like that. And that also can, one, help prevent crashes that occur at signalized intersections, because typically an emergency responder is having to go through an intersection and it may be red and he's having to slow down, make sure everyone's stopped and hoping that it has. Well, as autonomous vehicles and shuttles and stuff come about, they're driving at this moment, because they're not interacting too much with that signal, they're driving the greens. So if on that side street that shuttle's coming through and it's a green, but yet there's a fire truck and all of us, we know to stop because we know it's an emergency vehicle, that there could be a situation right there. That could be. So that's one thing where you have this emergency responder. The other thing on the emergency responder side is if we were to be able to allow these responders to go through these intersections, we've done a little bit of research, and what we're seeing is you can save about 10 to 15 seconds a signal. And if just based off of the average from rural to city, you're looking at average 5 signals. 6 signals, that's 60 seconds. And one fire chief I know very well, he's like, that may not seem like a lot to people, but try to hold your breath for 60 seconds. Mm-hmm. He's like, and then tell me, because that's what the other person on the other end is waiting on, or that's what they're trying to do. So that's where it's also in your life, but, and I've already spoke on the roadways and stuff and just trying to get that congestion relief and trying to be safe. I mean, one thing we're moving toward with the smart cities is also cyclists and vehicles, pedestrian and vehicles. I mean, we have the capability to do that right now. You have a cyclist ahead of you and they're around a curve and you can't see them. Well, your phone, given the applications and stuff that we have, can say, bop, bop, cyclist ahead. And it can tell the cyclist with the same application, bop, bop, fast approaching vehicle ahead. It's just a whole nother level of safety, and it's audible. And so instead of just visual, we're also using that audible sense too.
I can talk about a couple different technologies. I'm not going to get too much in the weeds here because it is rather technical stuff, but most of you are drivers. So in trucking as well as automotive, ADAS, automated driving assist, is the first step towards autonomous driving. So there are different levels. The trucking industry is actually has been using ADAS in that industry for a while now. They also use automated braking systems. There are huge efficiencies in fuel costs, in getting trucks to their destinations much more quickly, which also saves energy in the long run. The other thing that's coming around, which when you get into LiDAR and radar technology, this is when trucks will communicate with infrastructure, which is what you were talking around, the traffic component of that. They are looking at what they call platooning, and platooning is putting about 6 to 8 trucks together where they actually go down the freeway, and through sensor technology, essentially you could not have a driver if you didn't need one. The trucking industry is deciding they will always, at this point, they will always keep a driver in the cab. The industry doesn't see that they'll ever really get rid of a driver because they'll have them do other more important things that are part of the business. But that saves the fuel efficiency and is huge. I mean, it is very huge for the industry, which reduces costs out to the consumer for delivery of our goods and services, so it's all good in the long run. The other thing is it prevents crazy drivers on the road from, until we get to an all autonomous, which is a ways down the road. Those who are saying it's going to be in 2 years, that's not going to happen. I mean, I was just at an auto industry conference, and it's probably 10 years down the road, realistically. So until then, you still have multiple different types of vehicles on the road, connected, autonomous, different levels, to prevent vehicles from intersecting into a trucking group. Platooning keeps them out, the crazy drivers. So it is a safety function as well. So.
Yeah, I guess from my side, another one that we're seeing a lot of is also in public safety, but having to do with security and security cameras. And now you can put security cameras a lot more places because you can just put them on the wireless. And the networks now are much more powerful, so you can stream the video back to somewhere that can be looking at the video in real time and figuring out what's going on. And in fact, just last week, one of our customers, the Indonesian police force, was talking about how they know where everybody on their blacklist is at all times. And I decided if I ever go there, I'm not getting on their blacklist. But that's a big, all joking aside, in things like schools now, that's a big deal, putting security cameras in schools to contribute to public safety. So that we're seeing a lot more of that now.
Great. And Mary, you talked briefly about how smart cities really rest in some rural communities as well. And Winter, you talked about how you're working with the city of Atlanta, which obviously has a 500,000+ population in the core, and the city of Marietta, which obviously has a much smaller population. So tell us a little bit, I mean, when we think of smart cities, I mean, the term often it denotes the big urban, mega city centers, but it seems like from what you're saying, it actually could apply at all levels of communities and population sizes. Can you tell us a little bit more? Can you go first on this one?
Okay.
That's probably more in your
Uh,
alley.
I mean, so Atlanta, yes, is a very large city. Marietta is not large as far as probably the population that lives there, but it's the people that go through it. And that's going to be everywhere in and around Metro Atlanta. And, like I said, as far as even getting out into the rural, GDOT just actually rolled out the smart technology within their school systems across the state. And that's a lot of times in the rural areas because most times the cities around here are like Gwinnett County and stuff, they're taking care of their school flashers. I mean, this is allowing the people who work at GDOT, the people who work at the county, it's allowing them to make sure that those school zone flashers are on at all times. They're operating properly. They're on at the correct times. They're off when, there's a day off or there's or if the weather, something happens with the weather, they can shut those off. I never realized how many complaints come from the general public and the law enforcement regarding school zone flashers until I started talking to my, the colleagues I'm with and stuff. But it is quite a lot. And I guess I'm not there yet to know how frustrating that can be. But where this technology can take it, I mean, this product has over-the-air software updates, which is another key thing when you're dealing with smart cities, because especially in a traffic situation, you do not want to send someone out to every single cabinet that's out there for whatever it is, an intersection, a school flasher, to do a software update. So over-the-air software updates is key, and what that's going to provide for GDOT in the future is, for instance, with an application on your phone, you go through a school zone, the flashers are on, it's that time, and you, for whatever reason, people want to make sure the children are safe, and for whatever reason, you may not be paying attention, and once you get 5 miles per hour over that speed limit, your phone's going to audibly alert you and say, bop, bop, speeding in school zone. And that's just enough right there that can, and honestly, if we save one life, it's all worth it.
Mary?
Yeah. Yeah, so one of our customers is actually the city of Greenfield, Mass. So I don't know if you've been up to Massachusetts. It's a pretty small town. And what Greenfield did is, as you were mentioning at the beginning, they were worried about attracting more businesses because it is a rural place. And so the cable companies were kind of ignoring them, so they didn't really have the broadband infrastructure. So they built their own sort of simple, not fiber network, but a simple network, and then put wireless across it. So the city is actually now a network service provider for the whole town and the people living in the town, so that they can now get broadband service out there in the middle of the Berkshires in Massachusetts. So again, it's really important. I mean, big cities, it's important, but small cities are fighting for survival too. Yeah.
I can talk about more on the fleet side would be
You trust everyone in between.
the truck stops. All the major truck stop companies are getting into the connected game. It's a big deal, actually. So Love's, Quick Trip, Racetrack, they're all in this game to see who can get the most customers. But providing services for both trucking and automotive as you're out traveling on the roadway. So it's pretty crazy, the industry of what's going on. There's a lot of transformation going on in industries that you probably wouldn't think of. And financial services are getting into the game, providing services in vehicle, mostly on the automotive side, but they will convert over to the fleet eventually. So.
Right. And that's actually a great segue. So I'm really curious to know, like, so how did you get, obviously all three of you are really good smart cities experts. For all of us out there, how did you get into the smart city space? Like, where was your start, and what's your advice for those that want to get in this? What's your path or story? What do we need to do in order to join this level of expertise, or your origin story, I would say?
I guess I'll start. I'm looking around. I actually started my career in the automotive business. So I worked for one of the large manufacturers, working on technology in vehicles back in the earlier days. We still had a lot of advanced technology, believe it or not. We were using robotics and a lot of automation within the plant floor, a little bit in the vehicle, somewhat limited, but more on the manufacturing process itself. So I had spent time also in the advanced analytics and security space for many years, and decided there was a gap of issues with producing vehicles and security within vehicles, from my knowledge, having worked in the industry and having worked on the security side. Just said there's some big holes here. So that's how I ended up launching the company. I had worked for a startup in the advanced analytics space, and we started exploring IoT security and looking at products in that space. And I decided to go ahead and move forward with starting my own company in this space, and already had some knowledge of the technologies and the platforms, and had worked in the industry. So, I think there is a huge opportunity out there for women and anyone in this area. I mean, it's just, they can't find enough expertise of folks in technology to do these jobs.
Here.
Really,
Yep.
I mean,
I would agree.
It's getting really tight. So if you have a technology background, leverage it and move over. I mean, you can work for a startup. There's a lot of startups in this space who need talent. I'm pre-revenue right now, but we're raising money, and we're very close to raising money. So we're going to be hiring people eventually. And it's just not me. I have lots of colleagues who are in this part of the ecosystem, and they're all looking for talent. And so are the big manufacturers. If you like the big environment, they're looking for it too. And if you're looking to cross over from an area and you don't think you can leverage your expertise, usually you can. You can learn this stuff from your base. Having no technology is tough, but having technology is a great base. So I'd reach out to, if you're in big corporate, a lot of the innovation groups are doing a lot of cool stuff. So that's what I would urge folks.
I'll go next because I'm not from the technology side. I have a traffic engineering degree. That's my background. And, on the traffic side, yes, definitely, we've had to bring in intelligent systems. I mean, that's something that has to happen, especially here in Atlanta. You can't widen the roads anymore. There's just not enough room. Real estate is expensive. So obviously that is part of, our industry. But how I ended up here is I was in the consulting side, doing the designs, doing the studies, doing all that, which was wonderful. I got an opportunity to come into the product side. When I started in the product side, there was intelligent stuff, not quite to where we are right now. I mean, I remember starting with this company and I had a BlackBerry. And look how far we've come in less than 10 years with smartphones and everybody having one. I mean, technology is just going crazy and it's changing, every single day. But, I got in with these products, and fortunately, a company, we started partnering with a company here locally in Sewanee, and they are an amazing group of people. They're Applied Information. Their product I'm speaking on is Glance, and it started in a situation, and I'm sure most people could think, where we're providing something for the industry we're in, but then we find out we can do more. And it also may be a little bit outside the box than what that industry likes to do. So we may get a few people who are a little have fear and concern because they just don't know. But what I would say to get involved in this, I mean, I can remember my first ride, it was a Tesla, and I did not want, I was like against it. That was 2.5, 3 years ago, and I'm like, no, I will not be in an autonomous vehicle. I like control, I want a wheel, I want a steering wheel, all that. I mean, all of us in the vehicles today are in some kind of smart vehicle. They're making to give us more safety within our vehicles and help us to be safer on the roads. I mean, even my Ford Explorer has safety features that are very similar to where they're moving forward to the autonomous side of things. Once I was in it, it was 10 minutes when the guy was driving. I didn't realize he didn't have his hands on the wheel or his feet touching the pedals and, all that. And I'm like, he's like, have you not noticed this? I mean, we're just having a conversation. I felt comfortable, and I have a daughter, and I'm like, I hope this technology is out there by the time my daughter gets licensed. I mean, before I was so against it, have control, but now I'm, you just have to embrace it. You have to get rid of your fear, and that's by experiencing it. So just get out there and experience it.
So I have a little tidbit to add there. I have a 19-year-old son. He informed me that his generation is the last generation that will have a driver's license. He's convinced his children will not have driver's licenses. He didn't even get his own until he's 19. He didn't see any need for it.
That was a rite of passage for me.
I know. I know.
And kids today are not getting their driver's license. It's crazy.
But I did want to comment also on the opportunities. I mean, this space is so huge. And since we're the wireless, technology forum, I'll just point out that you really need to figure out what category or what part of the smart cities area you want to get involved in. In my world, there's the network infrastructure space, that's where I am. But then there's the device companies, the cameras and the sensors and all that stuff. Then there's the software and the big data. So that's analyzing what's going on out there and building the different applications like you've been hearing about for different use cases. And then there's the solution providers, who are some of the big companies like, Comcast and Charter, and those guys are providing solutions to the cities. And then there's smaller companies as well. So you really have to figure out, what do you get most excited about? Because in the end, if you're not excited about it, you're not going to be successful. Sorry, it's just the way it is. So figure out what that space is, and then figure out how your skills can apply to that space. Because like we said, there's just so much opportunity out there. You just got to figure out what you want to do.
Well said. So why don't we open up for questions a little bit? Now we have about 15 minutes to go. And when we have mics? I forget. No mics, but so please stand up, introduce yourself, and then ask your question. Right. So the question that Sabine asked, and I think it could be relevant for any of us, but what are the major drivers in city, university type partnerships, and even other PPP partnerships within smart cities space? I'll answer it briefly, but it's really for the three experts. I really much agree with what's been said. So there's still a huge frontier of opportunities in this space that haven't quite been unlocked. And I think I would describe it in three areas. One is virtual in terms of data. Data drives a lot of this, and there's still a lot of decisions from standards to security to privacy to monetization that haven't really been addressed yet. Two is the physical infrastructure, so everything from the roads to the broadband to stuff that honestly needs to be upgraded and evolved. The space that Lara was talking about, you're going to have different types of vehicles. And the roads that we were built were based on 50 years ago for a personal car. And that's not going to work as we have electric scooters, dockless bikes, connected vehicles that, or even, more pedestrian, walking. So how does that physical infrastructure evolve with the changes of technology, with the changes of even resilience in terms of natural disasters and different likes of that? And then three, which was touched upon, is workforce development, right? So do we have the right skills and jobs currently to support the virtual infrastructure, to support the physical infrastructure, and how do we gear up for that? And I think, what was said is really a good basis for trying to support this new wave of smart cities, right? All right, next question. All right, so the question is the competition question that often comes with smart cities is, which ones are the top 3 within Metro Atlanta and why? And I would even add, if you don't know Metro Atlanta, you can go broader in terms of where are we in Georgia, nationally, internationally. Where do you see in terms of your research, your work, where are the most exciting smart city type places or developments out there in terms of your work?
Wow. I can't comment on Atlanta, so. I think that's you.
I had a meeting with them today, so yes, they are definitely, they're looking at the future for sure with smart cities. At this moment, just by thinking about products in the field, which I guess is what I'm going to base it off of, the city of Marietta has 250 devices that are smart devices that can be connected to an application on your phone. The city manager actually last August said that this would be coming to the city of Marietta. They are ready. They've been ready for a couple of months, but they're obviously in the process of making sure they roll it out properly to the public and everything so that they know what the benefits are, how this will be safe, how they can use it, and things like that. And we are working with them on that also. And we're actually hoping to roll it out. I don't want to put us all in the hot seat, but within the next month is our goal to roll it out. And so I would say, besides the fact that they haven't got it out there to the public yet, but just by devices. And when I say devices, I'm saying they're intersections. It can provide you with information to your smartphone and vice versa. It can receive information. And this goes for their school zone flashers, their driver feedback signs, which are the ones that tell you when you're going too fast. And also their RRFBs, which is more on the pedestrian side. And then it'll just grow from there as they want it to. Of course, it's a smart city and we're all being very cautious, that we need to. So we have to just make sure it rolls out very properly. Atlanta, they don't have as many devices, but I will say where they are all about, let's do this. Let's do it. I mean, it's like, get the news out there, everything. Mayor Kasim Reed last year did the ribbon cutting, and that was part of this North Avenue project. I mean, one thing that made this North Avenue project successful was the RFI. It forced some people, like distributors, manufacturers, and product people, to work together because they also gave a hard deadline. It was on Mayor Kasim Reed's calendar. It's not moving. You have it, you've given an RFI, you said you can do it, make it happen. And we had this up and running in 9 months, which is unheard of when you're doing things, at least in the traffic industry world. It's quite And then I would say GDOT has actually really, just the whole state of GDOT, the Department of Transportation, they've actually really embraced. They've got new firmware software in their signal, in their intersection, so that, that's something that they've updated. They are looking at the DSRC radio side of things. Looks like they're going to be installing that. They're seeing that DSRC radio, which is a radio that basically you have 2 radios, one at the intersection and one in your vehicle, talking to one another so that it can, provide this. They're seeing that that's not the only option. They need to add in all these options just because there's not going to be a snap in autonomous vehicles. Everyone has one. We know the car I had in high school is now a vintage car, and it's still out on the road. So, we know there's vintage cars. We know there's a lot of things. And so we're just all in this area, and with technology changing every day, that's why it's so hard to define a smart city, because honestly, if we defined smart city, it would change because that technology we're using is changing. So,
Laura, any top truck stops that we should be visiting or noted?
Well, where a lot of the autonomous trucking testing is going on. You've got Texas has got a lot of platooning going on down there, testing. Phoenix for autonomous, both vehicle and some trucks, and then out in California. So those are kind of the three top, and then Europe, actually. So let's not forget international. The Europeans are doing a lot of testing on autonomous trucks as well. So Daimler, Volvo.
Any other? Great question. So the question is, besides safety, how does smart cities affect an individual on a social or cultural level? Go.
Okay, so I'll jump in on that because I was also going to mention the city of San Jose on the last question anyway. So from a social standpoint, what we've seen a lot of cities are doing is using wireless networking to help bridge the learning divide for the students that can't get on the network. So the city of San Jose, for example, had a big initiative to really focus on the low-income areas and make the network available to students outside of school time that didn't have access to the network. So that's really helping close that digital divide. And in fact, now there's discussions about, not just in San Jose, about putting networks on school buses, Wi-Fi networks on school buses, so kids in rural areas who have long commutes can actually do their homework on the school bus because they can't do it at home, right? So there's a lot of that going on from a social perspective.
I'm sitting here trying to think, and I do have one, and one is the Get Ready for Green. I mean, that's going to help us all. I mean, that if we can all save a little bit of time on that startup at the intersection, that can allow more capacity on the roads, in a different manner. Another one I got to thinking about is something that people don't talk about, but because, like, for instance, in the city of Marietta, in the city of Atlanta on the North Avenue corridor, the emergency responders, the fire, can go through those intersections on green. And so we have got the data, because there's all this data. It's what do you do with this data? But we've actually put it in a report for those emergency responders. And what that can do in some instances is actually lower your insurance for your area. And so, if we're responding better, then we get even monetarily, individually, we can actually, get help with that. The one thing we're trying to figure out is, because your question is exactly right, other than safety, what does it do? And what I'm finding, and this is kind of one reason I got into the smart cities and why I'm so passionate about it, is because of the safety and because there are 40,000 people who die every year on the road, and it's just an okay thing. If a 747 crashes, oh my goodness. But we're just accustomed to all these people, and it's really hard to sell safety. And it even goes back to a safety belt in your car, a seatbelt in your car. I mean, when that first happened, it was an add-on. You purchased that from the car manufacturer. Well, nobody thought they were going to get in an incident. We don't need it. So it was a policy. So that's going to be the other thing that drives this, is it's got to be policy. The policymakers have to come in and assist with what they think needs to happen on a safety level to allow for this to help people. I mean, when you say, what's it going to do for me? I mean, if you are a cyclist and you're on the road, it could potentially save your life. And I know that's a safety feature, but that's still pretty important. So, and just to add to that, so for instance, City of Atlanta would love to do more and more. Obviously, there's funding there needs to be funding that funds this. So we have been talking with them on their events area. I mean, so much you can help with the general motorists there, and how many of you kind of get concerned? We live here in Metro Atlanta and get concerned with going to an event and driving down there or taking MARTA or whatever, but even trying to find where you're supposed to go. So we've even if you're connected, you could easily have an app that helps guide you from one place to the next place. And so these people from out of town can come in and feel a little bit better when they're coming to these games and, spending money here, because that's what we want them to do. They can feel a little bit, better about coming in there.
Great. So lots of good use cases. Ultimately, there's a lot to be done to improve the overall quality of life, from public safety to health to, and I would say, I would echo, I'm sure Laura will tell you this, trucker lifestyles are actually one of the most demanding and stressful in terms of the jobs. And so there's a lot to be done in terms of just overall quality of life on all aspects, from living, working, and playing. But with that, I see that there is some conclusions that need to be had, and really the conclusions are just temporary, because there's obviously our panelists will stay a little bit during afterwards if there's any other questions. But I do want to give a round of applause to our panelists.
Good job.
And I'm going to turn to
So please join us next week for Mobile Identity and Privacy, and we will be at Atlanta Tech Village next Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m. And join us next month for Women in Big Data, second Thursday of the month, and we have a huge lineup of panelists, so you will have somebody that you'll want to talk to next month. And we had 10 events. We're having 10 events this year. Tonight was our 7th event. We've got 3 more events. We've got Women in Big Data. We've got product management, and we have predictions for workplace equality in 2020 and beyond. So please do come back here, second Thursday of the month. And follow us on social media. Thank you panelists, for today.